Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life's strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the misty depths of the mysterious and unknown. A strange sound in the woods. I'm a runner, and I was running on the trails at the Nathan Hale Homestead, which is an 18th century farmhouse and property of a Revolutionary War hero in Connecticut, which is only about maybe 10 minutes drive away from my grandmother's lake house. I couldn't find a map of the trails anywhere online, and there didn't seem to be any signage at the place, just a bunch of random mountain bike trails in the woods. I was only going to run about 4 miles, so I estimated that I would run for about 30 minutes, using my watch to keep myself on track. I'm a pretty experienced runner, so that actually isn't 30 minutes. 4 miles in 30 minutes isn't really that long for me. So I ran around the trails for a while, and nothing seemed too out of the ordinary. It was about 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and the only sounds were just the distant sounds of Route 31, birds chirping, and the occasional squirrel or deers or other small animals just sort of scampering around whenever I came near. The trails seemed to wind around a lot, and if not for my better than average directional skills, I would have easily gotten lost. So, about 20 minutes along the run, I saw something strange, maybe about 50 meters off or something. It was a finely polished, light colored wooden coffin. And I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was very clear. Um, I was kind of taken aback, a little shocked, and I thought, wow, that's really weird. Um, but I waited until I got a little bit closer for a better look. I rounded the corner where several old tree stumps blocked my view, only to find that the coffin had completely disappeared, and where it should have been was only a clump of ferns. So that was kind of odd. Why had I suddenly just kind of seen a coffin and now it's just a bunch of ferns, right? So I turned around and shortly thereafter and made my way back to my car. I was maybe a half mile out when I heard a very distinctive knocking on a nearby tree to the rhythm of Shave and a Haircut. It went tock, tock to tock, tock, except no two bits. I was spooked, but I chalked it up to maybe it was a woodpecker or some animal, bird or something doing it. However, probably not more than 30 seconds later, it came again, but this time on a completely different tree up ahead somewhere. Tock, tock to tock, tock. So I picked up the pace. I was getting nervous by now. A trail widened a little, and I could see way ahead the entrance to the parking lot where my car was. And then it came again, on a tree that was seemingly quite close to me. Tock, tock to tock, tock. I truly started freaking out at this point, and I started to just run fast right back to the parking lot. I was near to the opening when time just strangely just kind of seemed to slow down. All of a sudden, it felt like the temperature dropped about 20 degrees as well. There were no birds singing suddenly, whereas before I'd noticed there were quite a lot of birds. And my simple Timex watch just started to malfunction. It started making all sorts of beeping noises, and the numbers glitched on the screen. The beat sounded impossibly loud this time, like it was hacked into every surrounding tree with a hand axe. Tock, tock, tick tock, tock. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me as I anticipated hearing the two bits refrain and perhaps worse. I just burst into the parking lot and everything went back to normal. The temperature was suddenly back into the mid 70s. Birds were singing away. I looked at my watch only to discover that it had gone completely blank. I stood there and stared at it until it flashed 12 p.m. Monday, January 1st. My watch had reset itself. It had never done this before. I got into the car and I started the engine. I was just so nervous by that time and so scared. The clock on the radio display in the car read 12. That couldn't be right. It should have been around 9:30 or 9:45 at the latest. So I put the car in reverse and I backed up to where I could clearly make my way out to the main road. However, as I was about to throw the car into drive as it sat there, I heard a sharp rapping sound on the back window this time, like someone hitting it with their knuckles. Tock, tock. There was no one else in the parking lot when I had finished my run. No cars, no nothing. I didn't dare to look back and I hightailed it back to my grandmother's house. I have no idea to this day what could have caused this series of events and still cannot explain it. And all I can say is that it was terrifying. Wow, sounds like something or someone, probably something, was following you. I just sort of wonder whether it was, yeah, I guess it probably was malignant. I was going to say benign, but it sounds like it was probably malignant. Why else would it be messing with you like that and scaring you? So, just you just kind of wonder these people that sometimes disappear in woods, these runners and hikers and stuff. You kind of wonder what happens to them, if there's something like this out there. I don't know. Pretty creepy story, though. My grandfather. My grandfather was not a good person. He was an alcoholic. He was really violent. And at one time, he even tried to kill my grandmother in front of her own kids. One of his less terrible acts was abandoning my grandmother with their 6 kids, all under the age of 12. Some of his kids maintained minimal contact with him. He lived about 30 or 40 miles from my grandmother and the 2 kids who stayed in the area. When he was in his 80s, he was taken to hospital and he passed away in the middle of the night. In the morning, his oldest child, who was one of my aunts, went to the morgue to identify the body and to fill out paperwork. On her way, she stopped by my grandmother's to let her know the news because she didn't know yet. When she came in, my grandmother just said, "Oh, it's a sad day. He died just past midnight, I imagine." My grandmother had begun to show some signs of dementia or just basic old age. And so this unusual comment, wasn't really that out of character. So my aunt didn't really, pay too much attention to it. And so my aunt just assumed that maybe one of the siblings had already called and told her the news. So my aunt just sort of shrugged this off and she drove to the morgue. When she saw the death certificate, she was shocked to see the time of death that was listed as 12:10 a.m. On her way home, she stopped back at grandmother's and asked her who had called her to tell her the news and asked why she said that she thought he died just past midnight. My grandmother said, "He came to see me at 12:30 and we talked for a spell. He wanted to apologize for all he'd done to me and you kids. I think he made his peace and was able to move on, so I'm glad for that." My grandmother then resumed humming and doing a jigsaw puzzle as if nothing, very spectacular had happened or nothing creepy. That's a very sweet story, actually. It's nice to know that he went to her after he died and he apologized for the misery and the suffering he'd caused her. And, I think that sounds like you kind of hear about this quite often that spirits come back and they apologize for something they did. It's almost as if that's part of their um, process of moving on, I guess. So, kind of part of process of healing or something. The Old Man. This story was apparently a true story, and it happened to my sister's friend, but involved the house that I grew up in. The only reason I believe this is because my mom told me, and my mom doesn't lie. Like, I'm sure she tells small fibs like, yes, Amy, that dress looks good on you, but she doesn't make things just up, just like that. She told me a few times how she has seen an old man in our house. Not only is he old, but he's all burnt up. It's like his skin is melting. She says he looks at her and kind of disappears into the cabinets, which is kind of freaked me out a little bit. My brother has also seen him. One night, I was reading in the living room, and my sister and friend were in her room, my parents in theirs. This happened like maybe 13 years ago when I was 19. Suddenly, I heard this blood curdling scream. My parents opened their door. I got up from the living room and we all went to my sister's room. My sister's friend was in my sister's lap, sobbing. She was hysterical. My dad, thinking that it was probably just some kind of teen girl kind of crap, went right back to his room, and my mom went in my sister's room and shut the door. I went to the kitchen to make a snack. About a half hour later, my sister, her friend, and my mom came out of my sister's room. My sister's friend's face was red and swollen. She had her backpack, and her and my sister left. I guess my sister took her home because she was pretty messed up for whatever reason, whatever she'd heard or seen. Then my mom came in the kitchen, and I asked, well, what happened? My sister's friend was reading a magazine, apparently, on the edge of my sister's bed. She happened to look up down the hall, and my sister's door was open. And that's when she said she saw this old man that was kind of half crawling and half dragging both his legs, and he was coming down the hallway. She said his face was melted and his eyes were black. She never came over again. I have yet to see this man, but have had creepy things happen in that house, so I know there's something there. And sometimes when I walk into an empty room, it smells as if a match was lit. So now I'm kind of wondering, did something happen to someone in that house? I don't know. I don't really know anything about it, but it was really scary. And now I was also scared to stay in that house. Wow, that sounds like something happened in that house. Do you think there was some kind of fire there? Might be worth trying to find the history and see if somebody was burnt to death there or something, because that's sort of what it sounds like almost. I don't know, especially after you smelled this smell like a match was lit, like fire or something. So yeah, that's pretty freaky. It sounds like the old man was maybe burnt or something. Yeah. The creature in Iraq. I was in a combat zone in Iraq, and I was kind of bored, so I started drawing a picture. And it was of the scenery, and then I did like a few hills and some grass and a tree stump. And then on this tree stump, I decided to draw a creature that was somewhat humanoid, like a kind of tiny werewolf or something. It was 4 foot something. It had claws and teeth, this little monster thing. The commander then shows up and he calls us in for a mission. So I put away the drawing. Weeks later, we are in an abandoned base, staying in some new buildings, no windows, doors, or anything, just the concrete bones and openings for the installation of these things. Every night we have to set up watch. It takes the whole platoon to cover the building, minus a few per floor for run to reinforcements. I was one such reinforcement, sitting in an empty room in the dark. After a while, I noticed that I'm not alone. I looked up, and I'm not kidding when I say that the thing I drew was sitting on the ceiling staring at me. I was so shocked that all I could do was just stare back, and I gripped my M249, waiting for something to happen. When my team leader comes in, asking if I'm okay, as I tell him yes, he walks over to the one of the holes where the window would be, looks out, turns back, and he asks me, "Did you see that?" Later on, near the Iran border, we stayed at another abandoned base. A bunch of classrooms spread between six buildings. All are on one floor with walls that don't reach the ceilings. I had just gotten off a guard shift and I came back into my room and my buddy is in there and he's staring at the ceiling. I looked up and there it was again. I couldn't believe it. "What is that?" my buddy asked. Just then, our squad leader comes in asking what we're doing. We explained, but it was now gone again. Never saw it again in that country. And then, so fast forward several years, and I ended up getting injured in Iraq from some faulty equipment. So I got a medical discharge and I just got on with my life. And I came back. And then one day I'm in a bookstore and I find this book on demons. So I flipped through it and there was this same creature, the thing that I drew and the same thing that I saw twice at two different locations, preceding a personal injury that plagues me to this day. So then I wondered, did this creature have something to do with what happened to me? Was it like this harbinger of doom or something, or did it actually make something happen? I don't know, but I do kind of wonder about it. Well, there are plenty of stories of people who see, creatures and things, or ghosts of certain kinds, and just before something happens, like someone in the family dies, or there's this, natural disaster or catastrophe or accident or something. It's like they are, like harbingers of doom. Some of these things. So that's pretty interesting that you also thought about that.